Robin, well, for whatever was going on in his body, whatever drugs he was on, when we used to do a lot of coke together, and it was no secret that he used to do it, he would become quiet and withdrawn and go into a corner. It worked the opposite on him. So I don't know if they're going to find out he was on any kind of medication or what he was on, what he wasn't on, or what he could have possibly been going through. Because I saw him 6 months ago and he sounded fine.
Robin!
The Robin Williams thing hit everybody like out of nowhere yesterday, huh?
Yeah, it's really terrible.
I was at the park with my kids, and I read it on Twitter, and then I quickly did a quick search, and a lot of sites were reporting it as a hoax. That's the new thing now, by the way. Real news, now they say, no, it's a hoax to get everyone to these other sites. And then you quickly realize it wasn't a hoax, and it's the real deal.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but I mean, it's not surprising. You know, it's like on Twitter, I got a phone call about it, and then before I wanted to see if it was out before I said,
right.
It was right before, like a few minutes before. That's just awful.
Just another comic. Wow, it's just unbelievable. And you kind of knew Robin Williams from the Cellar and stuff.
Sure. I mean,
came in a lot.
He did over the years. I mean, first time was around '98 when he came in, and he kind of liked it there. And when he was doing, especially his plays,
right?
He was doing a play in New York, and he would come in a lot over the years. And he was just a really, really nice dude, and he treated the comedians well. He was a guy that could have kind of overpowered, it seems, like whenever he'd come and sit at the table, he knew that there's very few guys that can kind of come in and just sit there and everybody just shuts the fuck up and allows them to kind of lead the conversation. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But he's one of those guys, and he just wasn't like that. I mean, he just wanted to kind of be one of the guys and hang out, and he was really a very sweet guy.
Right.
It's just awful.
I mean, what could you say? 63 years old. He was sober for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. I know, obviously, like everybody else, he went to rehab, and I'd heard he was having a hard time, and I don't know if it's because he blew, like, long-term sobriety.
Right.
It was a few years ago that I think he blew it, because it wasn't recent.
No, they said he was sober from, I believe, 1986 to 2006, 20 years, and then just out of nowhere, which you've discussed a lot on this program, it's just kind of lying in wait.
Yeah, you got to be
addiction, and
vigilant.
Then all of a sudden you give it another try, and next thing you know, you're in deep shit again. So
sometimes it's when things are going good too. I mean, a lot of guys fuck up when they have money and things are good. And then you're kind of like, you know what? Fucking life is good, man, and it just happens. I don't know what I didn't know him well enough to like have asked him that.
Sure.
I don't know exactly what started him back down that road, but it's got to fuck with you. If you're sober for a long time and you blow it.
Yeah, you taught me that. That you're never really healed or cured. You always got to fight it.
I don't think you are. I mean, there's people that have these new things that disagree, and they say they can cure you, and hey, maybe they can. I mean,
right.
It just hasn't been my experience.
No, I believe you. I believe you and everything you've said over the years, that it's right around the corner, and you got to be really, really careful.
Yeah.
Like you get right back into the drugs or alcohol. We don't know, what the case was here, obviously, but
you couldn't not like him if you met him. He really was that type of. The first time he came in, me and Colin went downstairs. I remember we were going to watch, and it was like, comedians, you want to just kind of watch the big guy and not do well. It's literally what comics want.
Right.
You never want to see a big star come in who you don't know. And, you want to see him fucking shit the bed. And we were watching him. I don't remember what the material was. And he was so good. It was obviously topical from that week or from within a few days. And Colin goes, that son of a bitch really does have a genius streak, doesn't he? And we walked upstairs. Like, you couldn't not acknowledge.
You had to acknowledge it.
You absolutely had to. And it was a very funny moment. And he loved Colin, too.
Right.
Yeah, he really, really enjoyed Colin. That's the guy he would run down and watch if he was there when Colin was on.
Did you see a darkness there?
No, I mean, I knew it was there because
it seems like most of you guys do have a darkness that do stand up. I've learned that over the years.
But I wouldn't say I saw it in the sense that I knew he was, other than the fact that I knew stuff about him.
Right.
But no, when I was around him, he was always very pleasant. He was conversational. He would talk about whatever, Middle East or whatever was the conversation of the moment. But it was never some dark mood, or he never came in. I told you one night he was there, and the guy he played in Awakenings was there.
Right.
Who I didn't recognize, but he introduced me to him, Doctor something, and of course I thought he should get a picture. He's such a fucking asshole. I didn't, of course, thank God.
Yeah.
And embarrass him or myself. But no, I never saw him in one of those moods.
Did he have an off switch?
Yeah,
You see him on all these talk shows, and you think to yourself, wow, this guy has a lot of energy. Does he ever just kind of just, stop all that and just be, quote, normal, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, he would come in at times and be, he always had like that, especially the first times I saw him there. And I'm sure there was times he was there, I wasn't there. But he was, he went one of the other comics to like him, but it wasn't a dominating thing. It wasn't like, I'm going to hold court thing. It was just him kind of fucking around with the comics and having a good time.
Right.
But yeah, there was plenty of times he would come in and be quiet and just kind of just sit there and, just listen to what was going on and actually be very soft-spoken. So yeah, it wasn't always high energy or, I guess like anything else, when you get comfortable in a place, you kind of more yourself.
And we're old enough to remember when he burst on the scene. First on Happy Days, as a character on Happy Days, and then he got the spin-off Mork and Mindy, and he was just unbelievable. He was better than anyone else at the time, especially. No one was close to what he was doing.
Yeah, as time goes on, a lot of comedians, we forget, like, a lot of us when we were really young, he was an influence. And I remember, I found out in an old newspaper article I did when my first interview, he was one of the guys I listed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Reality, What a Concept, I think was the first record I ever listened to, like, when you weren't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Prior albums were around, but I think that was the first one I owned.
Right.
I turned the volume down and listened, and I remember liking when he said fuck. I think he said fuck 3 times in that album. And that was a weird...
You remember he said it 3 times?
I believe so. I could be wrong.
That's so weird. How old were you?
11.
11.
In
Listening
79.
to the Robin Williams
record.
record.
Yeah. Was that... 79. It was 79, yeah.
79.
Yeah, it's just, it's always a shock and it never is. You know what I mean? It's like when you know somebody has got that history, just because they're funny or they're great actors, it's no more surprising than somebody at work who does it. I mean, but I guess when somebody is publicly that person and you see that they are that funny and they have this ability to make that many people feel good, it always like, oof.
Why do so many stand-ups have demons? It just goes for some reason, it just goes hand in hand, which is so strange to me.
I guess part of it is...
Have you ever really just sat and thought about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. We've talked about because you wonder what is it that makes people funny?
Right.
I think part of it is it's kind of a reaction to whatever you are. Like, being funny is a reaction to being depressed because it's how you bring yourself out of it, or it's how you... I'm trying to think of how to explain this, but... It seems like when you're in a pit and it's kind of what you use to pull yourself out of it.
A coping mechanism?
Yeah,
in a way?
I guess so. Or it's how you make up for other things that you don't like about yourself.
Right.
If you're not good looking. That's why most he was a handsome guy, He was also a great actor, too. He wasn't just a comic. But most comedians are not classically beautiful people. Mm-hmm. Because that's like a little thing that you use to get acceptance.
Right.
It's funny, I was watching... Ant's show the other day when Dice was on, and Dice's son was really good looking, and Ant was joking, and he was just talking about how good looking Dylan was. He goes, and I had this, and he pointed at himself. Yeah. I had to work with this. I had to fucking tap dance, and it was very funny. He was very animated, but it was a really truthful statement about what makes people funny. It's like you have to. It's that extra thing you have to do to get invited.
You gotta work a little harder. To hang out with the cool kids. The, quote, cool kids. The popular kids.
But I don't know what it is that makes a person that. I really don't know. I can't, it's a thing. Like, if you said, what makes a guy come in who's funny? What is it that they say that's funny? Like, Colin will come in and say, I don't know. Like, when he really does know. Is it because he's lying, or is it the voice? Like, if you really break it down, what is it that makes a guy a fucking funny guy? I don't know.
Right. But it's across the board. It seems like you guys all have a darkness and some demons.
Most guys I know have something. Like
just about every single person, right?
Every single one I know.
But then again, people in general have that.
Yeah. Maybe I just don't know it with other people.
Right. Yeah, because we focus our lives on stand-up comedy and funny people in general doing this show. So, but maybe the average person does have the same darkness and demons.
Yeah,
I mean, no one really escapes that. I don't know, but it just seems like it's more. There's more of it in your world.
Yeah, and it seems like people are more surprised when it's from the comedy world. Maybe because people they make you laugh, and then the opposite of that is being so miserable.
Right.
But, to comedians, we're not surprised that other comics are depressed. I guess after a while you get used to it.
Right.
And, comics are just...
And it sounded like he hung himself, huh?
Yeah, when you hear asphyxia...
But a lot of reports were saying, hanged. He hanged himself.
Oh, I hadn't read that. I mean, you're probably right.
And now they're kind of just, kind of backing off slightly on that. Maybe because it's just too gruesome of a detail or something. I can't imagine that Robin Williams just did that. I just can't imagine that.
Yeah.
But they said he was deeply depressed in recent days or months, so...
When his show got canceled, I didn't see it.
I didn't even know he had a show on, to be honest with you. It didn't really hit, huh?
They promoted it pretty heavily. Like, I remember seeing, there was a picture of him with a light bulb in his mouth, and it was like, what was it called, Travis?
The Crazy One.
The Crazy,
yeah.
With Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Okay.
Gellar.
And when that got canceled, I didn't hear anything from anybody, but I remember like thinking, oof, like that's really hard. Probably when you are that guy, when you're a guy who's won an Oscar and been nominated all those times, and you have this tremendous career, and then you come on and you look. Everyone has projects that don't hit. I mean, obviously, case in point. But they, even guys on that level, have movies that bomb or projects that don't hit, and it's just a part of it. But that's gotta. But maybe that plays on your. But he had a self-esteem pretty bad.
He had a few duds before that.
Sure.
So what was different where he couldn't, handle this one or whatever?
I don't know. And I'm not even saying that was a tipping point. I just remember thinking it.
It's just a question. Who knows? Who knows?
It's like maybe you feel like, fuck, like, I know that when I see my contemporaries doing something, you don't wish them. I'm always happy for people who I like. I really am. But then there's that part of you. It's like, stand up and then performing is a self-centered fucking business.
Right.
Where you look at them and you go, wow, they're doing well. And then there's a part of you that thinks it's a direct mirror reflection of how poorly you're doing.
Right.
And how you're not doing well. So maybe who knows? Maybe he had that.
Can stand-up comics ever be satisfied?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I can only speak for myself. What pushes you to do forward or to move forward is the kind of feeling that nothing is complete enough, because that motivates you. But other guys may tell you different.
A lot of you guys, I mean, with radio, you settle in, you got a gig, I'm satisfied. Do I want more? Yeah, of course. Everyone wants more in the end. But I see it with a lot of you guys. There's your careers seem exhausting at times. There's always something else you're working toward. Always. And then you finally, maybe hit with a TV show for a little while, and then that's short-lived, and then you're back on the road, and I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't know how you do it.
Well, we're lucky in a sense that, like, if a show doesn't do well, like Jeffrey's had, Legit was on for a couple of seasons.
And that's got to be frustrating, too, because it was a really good show. I liked that show a lot.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't last. It might have, I don't even know if it got the ratings. Maybe it did. I just don't know.
It was probably too different for mainstream or something, so Possible. It wasn't bringing in the numbers, but it was clever. The writing was really good. It was funny. And then FX moved it over to FXX, I believe, which made it really tough. But then you would think, okay, you put him in a tough position, give him a year or two to try to make it work. But then, boom, they get rid of it when no one even knows where FXX is on their cable system.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to find it within 5 minutes, probably.
It's a very tough move to make.
So now he is back, back in the pool or whatever you want to call it, and trying to figure out what the next thing is.
Well, that's what I say. In Montreal, we saw him. But what he'll do now is he'll go out and do road stuff, and like at least the one thing for stand-ups is like when a show doesn't go or when it gets you always have stand-up, like so he can go out and do like another brilliant hour or do a special,
right,
and have that go on Netflix or HBO,
right,
and all of a sudden, hey, look, it's Jim Jeffries again a year later, and then people want to.
But that's what I mean. Now you're working toward that, and now you're back again for a little while, and then that fades out a little bit. Then you're trying to work on that next project.
Pure actors have it harder, I think, to the degree is they'll a lot of times sit for years in between projects because all you can do is go out there and audition.
Right.
Like they can't go out and work. I mean, they do a play,
Right.
but they can't go out and work every night and go down to the Cellar or go to the Comedy Store and fucking work on material.
Right.
At least the comic can go up and take whatever it was that just happened and work through it or mock it or whatever you have to do to work through your demons with it and move it forward. Like, I think there's an advantage to stand up in that, whereas actors, it's like those fucking guys got to sit around for a long. How many guys do you see do a movie? And then the next movie doesn't do well, and then it's like 3 years before they have something else. Like, at least the stand-up can come out and fucking at least be funny on Fallon or Kimmel or whatever, and at least kind of keep your face out there.
Right, exactly. Does this Robin Williams thing scare you?
No, I mean,
You've been sober a really, really long time, since 17 or 18. I always mess
18,
up.
yeah.
18. I got to remember it's 18, not 17. I always say 17. So that's like, you're pushing almost 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that it scared me. Like I said, it surprises you and it never surprises you because I've seen many people do it. Anyone who's sober has seen many people have this happen. So it's like, it just reminds me, like, if you look at a guy like that from the outside, that should prove to people that the shit you have on the outside is really never going to save you in the end, because he was one of the most respected comedians. He had any accolades you can get as a comedian. He was a fucking A-list guest on any show. He could do any show whenever he wanted to do it. He had that kind of, I should say, what's the word? Not juice, but that type of heat, or I'm not finding the word right now. Not carte blanche, no, you're thank you. That's the worst choice. You literally couldn't have made this sadder unless you said that. Thank you. You just taken today and made it worse.
You needed the laugh, though.
Yeah, no, I don't. But he did. Carte blanche is actually probably the best way to put it. And he had money.
It's just a shitty word. No one likes using that word.
No one uses like carte blanche.
We know that's a word you could use, but we just choose not to.
But he had that. It wasn't enough. It didn't matter.
Right. He was still working, by the way, because his TV show did get canceled. But I heard on the way in that he has 4 movies in the can that are coming out next year, I believe. So.
And Mrs. Doubtfire 2 would have made him a shit. Maybe I don't know if he wanted to do it or not, but that would have been a shitload of money. There's no way you're not going to make money doing that movie.
He was going to do it.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he was in development.
And
his body of work is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Good Morning Vietnam. I mean, everyone's going to run through the list today, but it's, there are some really great fucking movies.
Good Morning, being in the business. Good Morning Vietnam was just amazing. What a great movie. Good Will Hunting, and just the list goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Poets Society.
I saw him in a creepy movie I've talked about over the years that just no one really saw. What the hell was it called? 24-Hour Photo or something like that?
Yeah.
1 hour photo.
1 hour photo, right.
He was so freaking dark and creepy in this movie, and it got a limited release more or less, and I just thought that could have been a really, really good movie if they just kind of rewrote a few things.
It was a good movie.
I thought it was really good as is, but it was so close to being a big movie, I thought, and he was just creepy and dark in that thing.
World's Greatest Dad.
Of course.
Is that a Goldthwait movie? Did Bobcat Goldthwait direct that?
I believe you're right. Yes.
That was a really dark movie too, about his son committing suicide by mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah.
An accidental hanging while jerking off or something, which is a funny idea. But then he's and then he was trying to make it something else. I forget what the push of it was, but it was. He did some great with the Pacino movie with an Insomnia. It was called.
Oh, right.
He did some darker roles.
Yeah.
He did some darker roles.
It seemed like, a little of the real personality might have came out in those roles at times. Who knows?
It also seems that when you have movies like that you win the Oscar for, it's hard. Like, what do you do from there? Like, anything that's not that might seem like less of an accomplishment.
Right. He was able to get a sadness in his eyes for some of those roles, like a darkness, like a vulnerability in the eyes, so... God.
He was a Juilliard trained actor. I think Christopher Reeve was actually his roommate.
They were really close, huh?
Yeah, he was a great fucking actor too. So he was never not going to work.
Birdcage.
He was hilarious in Birdcage.
Yeah. Let's the phones are just lit here. Let's say hi to Matthew in Delaware. Matthew.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, buddy.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, I was just wondering, do you guys think it's necessary to have like demons to be a comedian?
So that's a good question. I sort of asked Jimmy something similar a little while ago, and I don't know. I've been lucky enough to be in this room with all the A-listers in the business. We never had Robin Williams on, by the way. Unfortunately, we tried over the years. I don't know, and there is a darkness with just about every single guy that we've had in here.
Yeah.
I personally don't know any that don't, but again, I don't know a lot of them well enough to know what their demons are. If they like Seinfeld, we joke about, but he's a guy I've seen. I don't know if he has any because I just don't know him on that level.
Right.
And I've never seen evidence of it or heard evidence that he was a dark guy.
Right.
So he may have none, or he may have a thing that we don't know about.
But it's funny because if you do see a guy that doesn't have obvious demons, you always think, okay, what is he hiding? You don't give him the benefit of the doubt. You're always like, what is he hiding that we just haven't figured out yet? Hey, Bobby Slayton in studio, who knew Robin really well, right?
Yeah, I was in New York City. And
Thank you,
I didn't want
Matthew.
to call you guys, but it was, I think this is the first time in years I've been on radio where I didn't come in to plug something.
Right.
But, and I think your show, more than any other show on radio, has done more to nurture comedy. You've had more comics on, and I thought that you guys, I needed to come in and just tell you a Robin Williams story. I wasn't sure what the story was, but we started out together. Now, Norton, you must have worked with Robin over the years.
From the Cellar, he's came in quite a few times over the years, yeah.
Well, when I started doing stand-up, I think it was 1975, 76, I'm 21, and I wasn't doing stand-up. I went into an open mic night. There was a club called the Holy City Zoo. You've heard of that, right? It was a famous club in San Francisco where they did a professional comedy night on Sunday and an open mic night on Tuesday. So I went on, and I sucked, of course, and a few other comics went on.
Was this the first time you were on?
Yeah, first time I was on. And then it might have been the second time.
Oh,
and then Robin
very new.
came in.
Yeah.
And he was one of the professional comics in San Francisco. There were guys, when I say professional comics, it wasn't like the Comedy Store or here in New York. There was guys you never heard of. A guy named Jim Giovanni who went on to do the new Laughing Show. There's Bob Sarlott, who Letterman has on all the time. It was before me and Dana Carvey, Kevin Pollak. We came like a year later. So Robin went on stage and nobody knew who he was. We were talking a couple of years before Mork and Mindy. And the guy, I wanted people to know this about him because, you've seen him over the years and you've seen him do so many different things from Aladdin and Garp and, Mork and Mindy, of course.
Garp, Jesus, of course.
But he was a force of nature when I saw him get up on stage, and he was still, if I was 20, 21, and I'm almost 60 now, so Robin, again, 23, 24 years old, and he was mind-boggling. It was a little bit of, it wasn't really stand-up. It was a little bit of performance art. You could see like a little Jonathan Winters in him, a little Sid Caesar in him. It was stand-up. It was improv. The guy just did something. But here's the funny thing. When I became a doorman at a club called the Boarding House. It was like the bottom line here in New York. And,
they had comedy and other types of
they had comedy, but Steve Martin played there.
Okay.
The place was always going under, and Steve Martin would come in and do benefits for David Allen, who owned the place. So Melissa Manchester, the folk singer, rock singer, whatever she is, was playing there one night, and Robin was opening up. And this before anybody knew who he was. So the announcement was, our opening comic, Robin Williams, couldn't be here. And nobody gave a shit because nobody knew who he was. Right. But we have from Russia a new comedian named Nikki Lennon. And I'm sure this is before Yakov Smirnoff. And Robin comes out, Rob from Russia, and you're in your country. And he's doing jokes that were kind of lame, but he knew they were lame, and nobody was laughing, and nobody got. And it took him a few minutes, and you could see that Andy Kaufman kind of, Elvis thing and that performance art thing.
Right.
And he was just great. And look, none of us know what happened to him, if his, what drugs he was on or what he was doing. But when I was on your show a few weeks ago and you said to me, I told you I'd done a line of coke. And you said, I can't believe you're doing a line of coke.
It freaks me out.
Right. But it was one time, for one reason, I was tired and it was fine.
It's all good. Don't worry about it.
No, but the reason
I just worry about you, Bobby.
Is that Robin, for whatever was going on in his body, whatever drugs he was on, when we used to do a lot of coke together, and it was no secret that he used to do it, he would become quiet and withdrawn and go into a corner. It worked the opposite on him. So I don't know if they're going to find out he was on any kind of medication or what he was on, what he wasn't on, or what he could have possibly been going through. Because I saw him 6 months ago and he sounded fine.
Right.
When did he get out of rehab? When did he get out of rehab? I know
recently.
That was so many years ago when he went back he had a 3-year little, I guess for a couple of years.
He just went back in like last month though.
Yeah, but he went back in, supposedly, he went back in just to have a checkup, but which is weird. Who goes in just for a checkup?
I had heard that he might have been having some other trouble.
Well, yeah, you figure a guy goes back into rehab after years.
Yeah, he's not going in for a checkup.
Unless it's for depression. Some people check in places for depression when they're not getting high, so who knows if it was that.
Well, they said he was severely depressed in recent days.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't because his show got canceled. I'm sure that wasn't anything. I mean,
No, because he had 4 movies in the can.
He did, really?
That's what they're saying. that are 4 movies coming out next year.
You know, he really was just a great guy and a great performer. And see, a lot of people remember him, you know, when he did that, you know, Robin Williams Live on Broadway. It was becoming more of a stand-up. Remember that, Norton? It was just like jokes. He did a Broadway HBO special. It was an hour and a half.
The Met? Live at the Met or no?
Was it the Met? It was Carnegie. No, where was it?
I know he did a few. I mean, I remember Live at the Met was a great one. I don't remember all of them.
But he was almost more of a stand-up at that point. But when he started out, you know, it was just amazing to watch.
When he like Reality, What a Concept, the Shakespeare stuff. He did a lot of Shakespeare improv and a lot of, you know, yeah, that was kind of his.
And when that record came out, you know, it was a record, and it was the kind of guy you need to see visually. It was like Alice Cooper. The music was great, but to watch the actual performance was amazing. And, you know, my daughter called me last night. She was, this is kind of funny. I put this on Facebook. When she was little, she loved Peter Pan. Everything Peter Pan. Whether it was the animated Disney Peter Pan, Mary Martin on Broadway Peter Pan. And when that movie Hook came out, remember Julia Roberts and Robin and Dustin?
Sure, yeah.
My daughter, kids will do this, you know. They sit there like a mental patient, you know, watching the same movie over and over. So every day after school, for months, she would watch Peter Pan. And I went up to San Francisco, I guess it was the early 90s, and I said, would you like to meet Peter Pan? And she didn't know who Robin Williams was. He was Peter Pan. So we went over to his house, and she sat there for an hour. And if you think I talk a lot, my daughter never shuts up. I've never seen her so quiet, just looking at Peter Pan. And when she left Robin's house, she says, I can't wait to tell my friends I met Peter Pan. And Robin goes, don't tell anybody. Nobody's going to believe you. They're going to think you're crazy.
Right.
That's my big Robin Williams story. That's what I wanted to share with you guys.
He definitely was, I'm going to guess, I didn't see him after the show got canceled, but I'm sure he was miserable about that. Whenever there's like a guy on that level that has a show go through one season, it's got to be like a public, like, fuck, man, I lost my fastball or whatever a guy thinks.
Yeah, but once I don't know, look, because I've never been in that position.
Not me neither.
But, yeah, and I never will be. But when you accomplish something that great, you know, then to do it again. I mean, even with your show, Opie, you know, if you went somewhere else and you said, well, it's not as good as the show used to be, the ratings aren't as good, but, you know, you reach a plateau.
We might be going through that right now.
I know that. but
we're trying to figure out a whole new thing here.
And you guys have been at this for a long time.
And it might not work. Who knows?
And you've already made it. But when you win Academy Awards and you win all that stuff, you would think that a lot of these guys would go, well, I have this amazing body of work, but who knows how they think?
Well, that's the question to ask Norton. It seems like a lot of you stand-up comics are never satisfied, and you're always it's exhausting to watch you guys, because you're always working on something, hoping that's going to be the thing for a while, and then you get that thing for a while, and then that goes away, and then you have to go back on the road and start working all over again to get that thing again.
Well, you know, for me personally, you know, I've had a lot of pilots that haven't gone, and I said, well, if this pilot goes, it could be my thing. I like to think, unlike Tim Allen, let me tell you a great story, because Tim Allen actually said this to me. Tim Allen did something in showbiz nobody's ever done. Nobody in the history of showbiz. It was like the Triple Crown. Nobody has ever had the number one movie, number one TV show, and number one book at the same time. I think Cosby had a show and a book. Seinfeld had a show and maybe a book. Santa Claus came out, number one movie in the country. The same time his book came out, Tim Allen's first book, and Home Improvement. It might have only been for a few weeks or a month, but nobody has ever had all three.
Wow.
So I am doing this horrible, one of these Fox TV shows, Comic Strip Live, or, you know, one of those, the improv shows. I worked at Laugh Factory in L.A., and they want to put me on last, and I'm sitting around, and it's nice I'm doing this show. You're getting paid scale, $600-700. Audience sucks. I just want to get out of there. And Tim Allen comes by, and he says to me, it's like the Prince and the Pauper. He goes, I wish I could be like you again. Just get up on stage, and then people laugh at me for what I'm, just because, you know, if I wasn't famous, I just want to get laughs again. And I don't know what to do now. I've done everything. I said, Tim, you have the number one movie, TV show, and book. What else do you want? He goes, yeah, but how do I top that? So there's a perfect example of a guy. How fucking, what more do you need? How do I top that? You did it.
I just wonder if you guys will ever be satisfied.
Well,
Can comics be satisfied?
It's like if you do a show Sunday and the show is terrible.
Right.
You feel terrible. You don't go, wow, at least the Thursday show was good.
Right.
It's hard to hold on. I think for comics, because we get such immediate gratification, it's there. It's right there. Whereas actors are used to waiting, and not that they don't care, but they're used to waiting a year. You do a movie, it goes through fucking editing and post-production, and you have to wait a year for anything from that movie.
That's crazy to me.
We don't have to wait a year.
Right. When you do the movie, you have this great body of work that's out there. And Norton knows this better than anybody. We've all had, every headliner comic has had sets, you know, where it's as good as stand-up comedy gets. Every one of us had those nights, and it's just magical. You talk to somebody in the audience, it's gold.
Yeah.
You couldn't get better. You wish that this would have been recorded, because this would have won every award. And then it's great, but the next day it's gone. Then, like he said, you do a shitty show, you hold on to that for a long time. You never, it's like that old joke. To the broad, we had the first show or the second show, the woman wants to, sleep with the comic. Which show we have, the first show or the second show? Sums it all up.
Radio similar to that.
Yeah.
That's where we have a connection.
How many great shows you do? And
you could have a lot of great shows, but that one dud will sit with you for a while. And if you have the dud on a Friday, you're like, your weekend's ruined, and you can't wait to get back on the radio on Monday and get another good show under your belt.
Yeah, at least we're lucky because we can have a dud on a Friday and a Monday, and it just kind of comes full circle.
That's why I wanted to come in on a Monday, so you guys have plenty of time to make up for me being here.
Right. Oh, it's the worst, though. It is the worst. And you've done well in general, but it's always that dud that gets to you.
It's always that one bad show. But, when you say comics are never happy, you see these guys like
No, I don't
Robin.
know. Yeah, go ahead.
Or no, even actors. So you watch Bruce Willis, and he'll do all these shitty movies. You go, how many more? Or the Rolling Stones, who I love with a passion. You can't wait a while and put out one great album instead of 3 mediocre ones. It's like they got to keep topping themselves, and they got to keep working.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, if I had money, if I had your money, Ope, you'd never hear from me again.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Buy a little island. I'm sure I'd go crazy in a week. I always say that. I would just retire. But then, would you
Wait, I'll never hear from you again?
Well, I'll call you when somebody dies.
What's the number? I have to think this one over. What's the number to make you go away?
I don't know. The money I'm making now is probably low 6 figures.
Low 6 figures. The early days, though, in San Francisco. So Robin was ahead of you by a couple of years?
Yeah, but when he
who
went on,
was his guys that he hung around with in San Francisco?
Well, it was all of us. When I said he was ahead of us, it wasn't like a different generation of comics. He kind of started out, I think me and Dana Carvey got up together for the first week. And
Once again, your group was you, Dana Carvey, Kevin Pollak. Who else was it?
Well, Robin. There was a guy named Jeremy Kramer. You know Jeremy?
I did not know him, no.
Robin would do improv with Jeremy all the time. There was a guy named Michael Pritchard, who's now a motivational speaker. There was Paula Poundstone and Bob Goldthwait, who had moved from Boston. They were at the Boston comedy scene. So they moved to San Francisco. And we all hung out. We all worked together. But Robin was one of those guys. It was... He'd always come to my shows, and he'd always like to go on after the show. He liked to play. It was, just to get out of his house. And he'd do improv. I wouldn't do improv. I'm not an improv guy. You?
I can do it by myself, and I'll play with the audience, but I would never have gotten up there and been ballsy enough to do it with him.
Oh, no.
Never.
Rick Overton from L.A., does with him. So Robin would always come into all the comedy clubs, and everybody would give him drugs and blow because he never had money. But it wasn't because he just didn't care. He was so childlike in many ways.
And he was with John Belushi hours before his death, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they were doing a little something. And you've always heard that people always accuse Robin of stealing material. That's a famous thing about Robin. And unlike a guy like Carlos Mencia, who has boasted about stealing material, who's made a career out of stealing material, and I'd hate to stick up for Robin, but he was the kind of guy that he was like a sponge. I would literally, this happened all the time, you tell him a joke, and 10 minutes later, he'd come back, he'd tell me the same joke. I go, Rob, what are you, retarded? I just told you that joke. And he really didn't know. So who knows what goes into that lunatic brain is.
Yeah, and what Bobby's saying is the truth. It's not a cop-out. It really is the way, at least a lot of people I know saw him, is that it was like, because the way he would do that, it wasn't some shitty or sadistic thing. It was like literally he would hear something and it would fucking fly out of his mouth. And there is a difference between that and a guy who watches another guy and consciously steals his joke.
Right.
And it's just, that was something that, I'm not saying that just because he's dead either. That was something that people kind of realized a while ago.
It's hard to believe from an outside point of view because he was so unique with his stand-up that he was actually, taking lines from people.
Well, that's why when me and Colin went down that night, we watched him. Colin said that son of a bitch has a genius streak.
Right.
It was because it was all topical stuff. And we knew exactly where it was coming from. He had to be creating it. There was no doubt. You couldn't. It was just shit that was going on in the news at that moment or that week.
Right.
And you just knew that this is this guy creating on stage. And
right.
He was great.
And he made it his own. Isn't that one of the things with art? You got to make it your own.
Yeah, but there's a thing.
You can have influences, but you can't be. You got to then take all your influences and spin it out and make it your own.
Well, we've all done that. I mean, you've done that. Radio. I mean, nobody. Big Nose Down the Hall created radio, according to him. But we all basically. You look at any artist. You look at the Rolling Stones and the Beatles.
Right.
They'll say if it wasn't for Buddy Holly,
of course,
and if it wasn't for Chuck Berry, Little Richard,
of course, they were listening to records when they were growing up.
Of course.
And then they made it into their own.
Right. And on art, how many great artists you see, and you see the influence. And,
right.
Sometimes you got to decide, are they copying or are they influenced?
Right.
And every one of us, every comic, we all watched other people.
Was he the type of guy that made you want to quit?
No, because you know why? And Norton will agree with me on this. I watch a guy like Bill Burr, who makes me want to quit. Louis C.K. doesn't. He's a genius, but I don't do that kind of comedy. I watch Louis, I go, I can't do that joke. But I'll watch a guy like Seinfeld, but more like Bill Burr, or more like Greg Giraldo.
Wait,
why didn't I think of that?
Why Bill Burr?
Because to me, it's when you watch a comic.
I mean, why Bill Burr over Louis C.K.?
No, because you're maybe a bad comparison.
Stylistic.
Your style is more like you would say more like Bill Burr?
Yeah, because when I see a guy who, for example, I remember, who was it? I think it was somebody in the Stones. The first time Hendrix went over to play England, I think Brian Jones and Pete Townsend, they all said, we want to quit. But if you saw a classical guitar player, that's a different ball game. And Louis not that far from me. But when I watch a guy like Bill, or I watch a guy like Nick DiPaolo, and I go, that's a line I wish I would have thought of.
Yeah.
These guys are brilliant. That sometimes makes me want to quit.
I simply refuse to watch Nick anymore. Because he always fires out lines that make you want to just fucking take your computer and throw it in the tub. Like, why the fuck am I writing jokes?
Exactly.
When he comes up and fires out these... And the thing with a guy like Nick is he'll fire out a line and it's precise.
Oh, yeah.
And it's stripped of any bullshit and it's just it's a vicious little verbal fist. And you're like, that is a guy.
Absolutely.
If I wish I could write like that, I wish I had the ability to do that.
And if everything you say about Jay Leno, in a clean way, when Jay was the top stand-up, if you can forget about everything, The Tonight Show, Jay, I'd watch him at the Comedy Store. And he's the kind of guy, when every comic had, a McDonald's joke or an airplane joke, and you're all starting out, and Jay would have the definitive joke, stripped away of all the bullshit, because that's the joke I'm looking for. And that's, he was a sharpshooter. So he did the same thing, And DiPaolo, who was killing the Nasty Show up in Montreal, he closed the show. And sometimes I don't think he knows how good he is. There's a lot so when I watch guys like that, it makes me want to quit.
Gotcha. Wow. Let me go to the phones. We got Bobby Slayton in studio, the pit bull of comedy. Joe in Minneapolis, what's up?
Hey, Opie, what's going on, guys?
Hey, buddy.
Hello, Joe.
I'm not Brother Joe, no.
No, I said hi, Joe.
No, we just said hi, Joe.
Oh, okay. I thought you thought I was Anthony.
No,
Joe.
buddy.
Oh, boy.
Right.
I kind of know Joe's voice by now.
Okay, dickhead. Anyways.
How am I a dickhead? Jesus.
Well, I've been waiting here 45 minutes, but all right, no problem.
I'm sorry we didn't get to you right away. I mean,
Okay.
next time we'll know to take Joe's call immediately instead of talking about the death of Robin Williams and talk to a guy that actually knew him and came up in the business with him.
Joe,
I'm sorry, Joe.
This is Opie's fault because I was signaling as Bobby was talking. I'm trying to I'm giving shut Bobby up, get to Joe.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm sorry. It's all my fault.
Do you understand? Joe's on the phone. What are we doing?
What's up, Joe?
Go ahead, buddy.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Jim. And I understand, Opie. No problems. But what I was saying, I don't know if I heard it from this show. I don't know if I heard it from a podcast. But there was one thing that, and let me try to get to this the proper way. But Robin Williams, I'm just sharing a story about him. He was on like a German Jay Leno. He was on a talk show, and he was talking about that. And they said to him, and I'll do a little voice here, triple up that. Robin, why do you think that there aren't more German comedians? And Robin said, in his Robin's fashion, you killed them all. And that was one of the greatest fucking lines. You killed all the fucking Jewish comedians. You killed all the...
He stole that from Norton. That was Norton's joke.
Absolutely, but I didn't say he killed them all. I said, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Was that, did you do that?
No, dude, he's joking.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, hey. All right.
What? A thank you's a thank you. I said thank you, Joe. We're going to move on to Steve the therapist in Connecticut. Steve.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Good morning. Joe's scared.
Another, grim reminder that depression kills. You guys were talking about comedians and how dark they are. Back when I was DJing in nightclubs, I was working with a bunch of comedians once a week who did a stand-up show. And I gotta say that the characterization is exactly spot on. There was always something dark, always something like they were using comedy to cope or to run away from something. What's interesting, Opie, you said, why are all comedians, dark? What is that about them? I think people who start out dark, as Jimmy said, kind of favor going towards comedy because it's a way to cope. You, Opie, have said, have you ever noticed that most therapists have got to be a little crazy?
Right.
Well, that's exactly right. Nobody becomes a therapist because they have a bad back. They become a therapist because they're somewhat in touch already with darkness and then, the ability to sympathize and have compassion. Otherwise, they'd be off doing something different. So, just in my experience, your characterization is absolutely right on about the darkness in comedians, and I think if you look at other entertainers too, there is always a quest to reach and then top your latest high. If you look at what cocaine does to people in terms of secreting dopamine and them constantly chasing that. Maybe the new but safer version of that for many people in show business, comedians especially, is chasing that high, trying to get it and move on to an even higher sense of satisfaction in career and recognition. It's just some random thoughts.
Well, no, the thoughts are right on. You guys are all a bunch of kooks.
I can see where Norton probably was a dark kid. I was a pretty regular kid. I couldn't play sports or get girls. That's why a lot of comics do go into comedy. Were you I could see you. If anybody was a dark kid.
Steve.
Was it you? Were you like that or were you a normal kid?
To me, when I was sucking dicks under the porch and had a pretend friend named Jimmy Robinson, and Jimmy Robinson and I both hated Jimmy Norton. Yeah,
that was a sign. That was a sign.
That was my invisible friend, Jimmy Robinson, who had a cape, and we hated Jimmy Norton. It's not normal.
There was a great quote, and David Cronenberg, the director who did a lot of creepy movies.
Do you understand what he just said, and you're just moving past that?
Yeah, because
he and his imaginary friend,
I heard that.
Jimmy Robinson hated Jim Norton.
No, I did.
Do you understand how crazy that is? And you want to talk about something else?
No, Bobby's a rapid-fire guy. That's the way Bobby works.
I'm just fucking with him.
Bobby hits you on the head quickly and moves to the
He
next.
knows that.
Opie,
but don't you have a follow-up to what he just said?
Opie, first of all, I thought you probably knew that about him already, and I think
he's brought up Jimmy Robinson. No, he's brought up Jimmy Robinson a few times.
Yeah.
But I want to get into the fact that they hated Jim Norton. Why do they hate Jim Norton?
I have no idea. You put on Twitter, I'm sure somebody will answer.
You really don't have an idea why? No idea. Why you and Jimmy Robinson hated
Jimmy
Jim
Robinson
Norton.
had a cape, and he was a hero, and I just remember we hated Jimmy Norton. That's what we had in common.
So who were you at the time?
I didn't actually address that in the fantasy. I was just guy number one.
So you weren't Jim Norton at that point?
No, I mean, I was, but I don't know what my relationship with Jimmy Robinson was. I don't remember.
That's
awesome. I just remember he had a cape.
That is awesome. That has to be a Saturday morning cartoon.
Wow.
But go ahead, Bobby. I'm sorry.
No. I was just thinking also, I told you the first time I met Norton, he opened up for me up at the Laughing Wolf, and we went walking through an apple orchard together.
It was a delightful afternoon, actually.
Yeah, it was a little gay, maybe looking back on it, but we had a nice day. We got some fresh air, and I said nothing strange about, that Jim Norton. But the fact, I thought it was kind of strange we're taking a walk through an apple orchard together, two guys.
What's your demons?
My demon?
Yeah, I've asked you a couple times over the years, and you always guard and deflect and push onward to something else.
You know what? It's just
which I respect. If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine.
There's no real demon. I've been a good husband. I've been married for 26 years. My daughter, I was a good dad.
Did you have a darkness growing up, though?
Huh?
Like any weird shit happened to you when you were growing up? Broken family?
No, that's what's really weird. I grew up in Scarsdale, not the rich part, but at a paper route. I went to Hebrew school, which I think destroyed me for life. People won't think that was a nightmare. That was the most horrible thing. 3 days a week, 6 hours a week, having to sit in Hebrew school. It was a nightmare. But that was as dark as it got. Started smoking dope when I was 14, but I'd go see the band with the Stones. And it was fine. That's why maybe there's something there that I don't know about yet. Maybe we'll find out. I'll come back on the show. If anybody's going to find out, it's going to be you. Nobody's ever asked me that. There's no demons. I recycle. I eat dolphin-safe tuna. I get on the left lane if somebody wants to pass. I make a right turn on a red light. I've never hit my kid. So I'm actually... The only abnormal thing is I get up on stage and I scream at people. Right. And I think I get it all out then. So I don't think everybody has a dark side, necessarily. We all have a little...
No, I don't think everyone, but it seems like a majority of you guys certainly have some darkness to you.
Well, when you play in, these certain comedy clubs and you're in some horrible little town and you make it a third of what you used to make and you get all depressed. I'm severely depressed, but not Robin Williams depressed. You know what I mean? Like today I'm off I'm here in New York for a day between gigs. I'm going to walk around New York. I'm going to eat pizza. I'm going to go have drinks at happy hour. I'm going to have some oysters. I'm going to watch some porn, jack off, and go to sleep. That's a great normal day.
Where's your next gig?
I don't need to plug it. You know where I am?
Wow.
You know where I am? And, I was supposed to do the Tonight Show on Thursday, and it got postponed. And I was going to have to plug Giggles. I love Giggles from my friend Mike Clark up in Saugus. And next week, at Magooby's Comedy Club outside of Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Magooby's and Giggles, which are great clubs. But the first time I did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, I think I told you this before.
We weren't asking about Johnny Carson.
But the reason I'm telling you, I didn't want him to have to say, you
never did Carson, dickhead comic. Dickhead doubtful comic. Bullshit.
I didn't want him to say he'll be at Rooster Teeth Feathers, was the club. I didn't want Johnny to have to say that. I wanted to hear Carnegie Hall. That's the thing.
Were you on with Johnny or a guest host?
Johnny, no, you know what? I was on with Johnny once. And
what year?
It was in the early 90s, and it was a year before he retired.
Did it? Oh, okay. So it didn't drastically change your career overnight?
Because
it was a little later on.
Dana and Pollock had each done it like 15 times. The guys I started out with.
A lot of you guys have talked about you did Carson back in the day, and the next day you were a massive superstar.
Well, that was about 5 years before I did it. By the time I did it, unless you were Drew Carey or some Stephen Wright or some kind of oddball comic, I was just a regular straight-ahead stand-up. So I get the show. It took me years to get it. And I said to Jim McCauley, who books the show, I said, if McLean Stevenson or who was it, John Davidson is hosting, I don't want to go on. And he said to me, well, you might not have another shot. And I said, I've waited 15, 20 years to do Johnny Carson. I'm not going on with John Davidson. It's just not going to work. It's like going to a whorehouse and all the hookers are going, you got to blow the night watchman. Now, I'm going to wait for the girls to come back. I'm going to wait for you to reopen.
Right.
And so Johnny, I did it with Johnny, and I'm very proud of myself. It was a great, great, great set. But anybody doing the Tonight Show for the first time is going to have a great set.
What do you think of Johnny Carson? Did he come back and say hi to you?
He did beforehand, but after the show, Jim McCauley says to me, Johnny loved you. Can't wait to have you back. 2 days later, Johnny announced his retirement, and I called Jim McCauley and go, when can I get on? He goes, you're not getting on. Everybody in showbiz wants to get on now.
Right.
So that's the story of my career.
Were you scared shitless seeing Johnny Carson?
No, because
in person?
I waited so long. I was more scared coming on.
You weren't intimidated?
You know, he came up and he said, hey, I'm a big fan of yours, which he probably wasn't. But he was very nice.
We discussed that yesterday.
Yeah.
Colin Quinn burst our bubbles.
About what?
A little thing with Shaq. Shaq came in here and he said, big fan, like you guys. I think he even said, I listen to you guys. And Colin was making sure we knew that was all bullshit.
Yeah,
we sort of knew, but part of our brains were thinking, maybe, you never know. You know? And Colin's like, Jimmy's right. Jimmy's right. We were just lying to ourselves. But Colin really hammered the point home and really made it hurt yesterday.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I can see him do it. Yeah, it was a little intimidating, but you know what? When you wait so long to do something and you go over the jokes billion times in the shower, forwards, backwards, I had it down. And once the first laugh comes out, you're fine.
You're in the zone, right?
And then I never went back. I was more nervous coming to see you and Anthony for the first time after we hadn't talked for years. That made me more nervous. Are you happy now? Now I feel like we're family, which we're not.
Oh, God. Let's go to Tony in Brooklyn. Tony!
Hey, what's going on, boys?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I kind of skew with Anthony with the whole Robin Williams thing as far as his comedy, but I really appreciated him in like Awakenings and Good Will Hunting. Tremendous actor. I mean, he really had a depth and a soul about him that was just unparalleled. And I think
what you're trying to say though is you didn't really like his stand-up. You liked him more as a dramatic actor.
Yeah, I thought he was tremendous. So
he got a little goofy on some of these talk shows for sure. But you can't deny his brilliance, when he was doing his actual stand-up.
Whereas, it's great to be in a position like Robin was, where people can say that and go, you know what, I didn't love his stand-up, but man, I loved his acting.
Right.
Like, what a cool, and you can be legitimate and say that.
Right.
Because his body of acting work is probably even more impressive than his body of stand-up work.
Right.
The fact that, how many stand-ups have been nominated for fucking 4 Oscars and won 1? I mean, it's just...
He's nominated for 4.
I think so, yeah. Good Morning Vietnam.
Right.
And I don't remember the other ones. I know...
Garp? Was maybe Garp?
He might have been nominated for Garp, yeah.
I think Aladdin. Even the animated feature.
Was he? Okay.
I don't know.
They were talking about Aladdin. They said the animators were so frustrated because they couldn't keep up with him. They couldn't keep up with what he was doing.
Like us, kind of. Like you and me.
No, I could keep up with you.
You don't want to.
No,
I don't exhaust.
I need a line.
Sorry.
I might come out of retirement so I can keep up with Bobby. No, they said the animators, though, they just couldn't keep up with everything he was doing because they had to try to animate everything he was doing. He'd go from one voice to another so quickly. This is crazy.
It was pretty amazing.
So.
Tell him, Fred.
The Virus. Sirius XM. This is the Opie and Anthony Show.